Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to the Gardening for Food and Wildlife event that ADECA has kindly put together for us. I'm Emma and I work with Garnet Connections. So before ADECA gets started, I'll just give you a wee rundown of Garnet Connections, a little introduction. So Garnet Connections is a landscape partnership project which is funded by the Lottery Heritage Fund. The project is based in southwest Scotland around the River Garnock, which runs from the Muirshiel Hills in Renfrewshire down through North Ayrshire to the Irvine Bay, where it meets the sea. So on the map here, you can see the boundary of the project area and the towns within it. So this area that surrounds the River Garnock, otherwise known as the Garnock Valley, those of you who live there will know that, is rich in cultural and natural heritage with historic settlements, a varied industrial past, and nature reserves like RSPB Loch Winnoch and the Scottish Wildlife Trust's Garnock Floods. So the overall aims of Garnet Connections is to engage with communities in the Garnock Valley and connect local people to this wealth of heritage that surrounds them. So this is to enable history of the area to be remembered and preserved and the natural assets to be protected and enhanced for species biodiversity. And to do this, Garnet Connections is made up of a variety of partners with a range of knowledge and skill sets to help deliver a variety of projects, around 25 in total, from archaeological digs to habitat restoration. So my role as wildlife recording assistant with Garnet Connections is to help deliver the Go Wild in Garnock project, which aims to connect people with natural heritage through training and wildlife recording. But today's event is a little bit different. We're going to be looking at how you can grow your own fruit and veg at home, but also how you can make your outdoor spaces wildlife friendly. So on that note, I'll hand over to ADECA so we can get started.
So I'm just going to present myself quickly. I'm ADECA. I work for the Conservation Volunteers in North Ayrshire, and I deliver a project called the Natural Health Project. And this project provides like a direct referral route from GPs and NHS staff to various community activities like a green gym and health walks that I deliver around there. It's a way of connecting people to nature by improving their physical and mental health. And as well, a good way that we've been doing this is by gardening for food and wildlife. And I think that's the reason behind the name of this training. I think a good point to make clear is that I'm not an expert. I'm being in the process of learning. So I think that's a really good point of view, because it does means that actually anyone can do it, and it's not something difficult or something that is a massive challenge. It's just step-by-step processes and learning through the process as well. And does anyone has any experience growing food? You can start writing your comments in the chat, and I would like to know, so I know how should I focus the presentation, and if you have anything in particular that you're thinking to grow, maybe that'll be quite good to know. I see Keenan's said only tomatoes. Well, if you have experience growing tomatoes, you have a lot of experience because they're tricky. So you'll have lots of different things to share with everybody else here. And we have Leah Little, Grasontatis, and courgettes and strawberries. Well, that's a lot of experience, I think. And Janice says, lettuce, tomatoes, just a beginner. I think you are just a beginner as everybody else in this group as well. Well, so as you have seen in the promotion of the training, This is the first part. We're going to have a presentation, and it's going to be an introduction to making your outdoor or indoor spaces good for growing food and attracting wildlife. And the aim is just to provide you a good, solid base to start your gardening experience and to start thinking about things that you can do and how to do them, and the most important thing, how to have fun and enjoy what you do. Then after the presentation, we're going to have a break of half an hour, and we'll have a workshop in which we're going to try to everyone is going to try to draw a map of the outdoor spaces or a list of the different spaces they have. And also we're going to create a map, a calendar of all the things you're going to grow. So for these things, I'm just going to say that I'm using various handbooks. I am using the RSPB Garden Wildlife Handbook. Not sure if you can see it there. I'm not encouraging anyone to use these books or anything, but if you have a book at home that you can use, any book will be great. I got this one when I became a member of the RSPB, and it was for free. So it's not something that I bought intentionally for the training. I have this book for years now. And I'm using this other book called Veg in One Bed. This is my Christmas present, which I'm committed to fulfill this year. I had some experience last year doing bits and pieces, and it's actually really interesting. And lots of other things that I'm going to talk about in this book. However, I'm going to share lots of different free online links that you can use as well. So no need to buy any of these books. It's just an idea that if you have one at home, they will be of great help. Okay, so let me see. We have Gillian that says, very new to growing food. Well, this is the perfect training, Gillian. Hopefully you'll get lots of experience. And we have Heather that says, some experience here, but always wanted to learn more. Oh, she's joining us from Canada in 6:30 a.m. Wow, that is really, really nice from you, Heather, to join us today. It's almost 12 in here, so I hope you're having your breakfast at this time and with a really big cup of coffee for sure. So let's move on. Before I start, I'm going to give you a very brief, I'm just going to say a very brief presentation of what is my project in North Ayrshire and how I got experience to garden for food and wildlife. I deliver a local initiative that is a green gym. A green gym is like a conservation group in which people meet up, local people meet up once a week to do some bits and pieces for the community. And one of the things we do is that we grow food outside of a library in Kilwinning. So this is our green gym in here. As you can see in the before picture that it was before, it just looked like a normal green space. It has quite of the characteristic of any outdoor space in the UK. I think some words that can really describe it is low maintenance, grass, some trees around, not much work that really needs to be done in there. At the beginning, it was just a piece of grass, I guess, that we had, and we started just by incorporating some beds. So this is one of the beds that we have there. That is a herb garden. Then we just created some beds just around the grass as well, as you can see in here. These were radishes that were well eaten by all the crows. We didn't have much of a chance to have a try on them, and that's one of the things, like, we learned the next time when we grew them that we should have put some netting, and now when we grow them we put netting around. So as I say, it's all about growing experience. We have some peas, lettuce, carrots, and as well we planted a border of bluebells. And that is kind of a way of how you can attract wildlife to your growing spaces. That doesn't really need to be a big amount of things that you need to incorporate. Just small steps can really help you in the process. That was kind of the beginning, and this is how Kilwinning Library Green Gin was in 2020, 2021. As you can see, maybe all of us at the beginning of 2020 have really high expectations of what the year will be, but it didn't go as we planned, as we all know. But in January last year, we made a list of all the vegetables our volunteers like to eat, and wildflowers, and that's kind of how we started the year. And then by February, we had all the vegetables, well, all the seeds, and we created these maps that you can see in there in the picture, but you can see in my hands as well. Very simple maps, handmade, something that we'll do today as well. And they had each month of the year and what you should be doing as well with them. Then we had, by March, we had a little bit more of the seeds planted. Some of them were coming up, and I'm going to share like this in the presentation so you can see a bit bigger. So by March, we had some of the vegetables of the plants already coming up, which was a really good sign that we were going in the right direction. But at the same time, at that time of the year, we came, the first lockdown came, so it stopped all of our face-to-face activities. But that didn't stop us there. By April, I managed to deliver all the different plants we were growing, and all the volunteers took quite a chunk of it. And they started just growing plants, growing all these vegetables at home. And I see Mayra here in the chat that says that she did it as well. So that's a really good thing. And you can see between May and July how things were growing in everyone's garden. We had a really good weather, which helped with that, but also I think everyone was just having that extra free time to be able to do those things. And you can see some carrots in here. There's some potato bags, some peas. This is one of the best I had at home that I built it myself. And because we couldn't travel far, a neighbor of mine had some bed slabs that they were giving away for free. And I built this raised bed with them and planted the most that I could in there. So you can see here in this side, you can see those are carrots in each side. And then in the middle, I managed to plant garlic. And in the sides, I also put some marigolds. So it was like a really well-used bed with lots of bits and pieces, and actually did completely fine. By the end of July, we had the restrictions easing. So that meant that I started getting back to my volunteering groups. And we started by September, going back to the Green Gene. You can see in here, this is the picture of when we came back. The grass was so high, it was like almost in our knees. So spending quite of a day streaming, and lots of things move on quite quickly after that. We built a compost bin, as you can see in this picture here. Okay, in this picture here, and also some raised beds. And we were building this fence for almost a year. And with the help of the Scottish Wildlife Trust volunteers, we managed to get all the materials to finish it up. And by the end of the year, it was looking like you can see in this picture. So lots of big progress happened during that time. Another thing we managed to do is to integrate a bit more wildlife by creating a wildflower meadow. And you can see that in this picture in here. And my cursor is playing tricks with me. Okay, you can see in this picture in here. In January 2021, it feels like we're back to stage one. Anyone feels like that? Just comment in the chat. We're again sharing seed packs with volunteers. This is the seed pack I share with them, and then these are this is the picture of the seed packs. They were really impressed with my clean foil expertise, packing 2 or 3 seeds to have kind of a variety. And the seeds are doing really well, and they're growing now, as you can see in all of these 3 pictures. So that's quite of a good thing. And I think this is showing us a really good way of how now we can actually do things much quicker, because we have learned from all of those things that we did in the lockdown, and people feel just more confident to be able to grow their own vegetables at home. So saying all of that, let's get started. We're going to start in the next presentation, and I'm just going to start a little bit more with the different things that you need to take in consideration before starting your growing experience, I'll call it. But tell me in the chat, what spaces do you have? Is it a windowsill indoors or outdoors? Is it you have some a space in your garden outside? Do you have a balcony? I will say, like, if you can put 2 raised beds in your outdoor spaces, maybe that can mean that you have quite a substantial space outdoors. If you can put just maybe 1, that's a small outdoor space. So if you can comment in the chats about, so I get quite of an idea of the things you have. So getting started. The first question I think to answer is, what space do you have? For sure, this will let you know how much you can grow as well. It can be, as you can see in here, the outdoor steps of entering into your house. It can be quite some raised beds, some outdoor space, a windowsill, just an outdoor windowsill, indoor space just next to your window, or a balcony like this one. That's quite important to just think, well, I'm going to dedicate this space of my house for that. Then what conditions seedlings and plants need. So we're going to look at these 3 different points of finding your sunny spots, identify the type of soil you have out in your gardens, and to discover windy spots. So the best way to identify your sunny spots, I know lots of people have heard of south-facing gardens are really good for growing, because they provide quite of an amount of sunlight. But if I don't know how my garden is, if it's facing north or south or east, or is my house and the window sills I'm going to use facing different ways? How can I know that? Could be quite simple as using a compass that is on your phone, or it could be as simple as making a diary during the day, and because we need to maximize our sunlight. So you can start by just after the sunrise, making a note of what are the places that have a full sun, partial shade, a filtered sun, or full shade. And just making a note is, let's say it's 7 a.m. and I'm just walking around my house, walking around my garden, and having writing down these notes and taking this in consideration. Then, if you do this every hour, you will be able to find out which are those spots that are much better for sunlight. And I'll give you a really good idea of how to maximize them, how to use them, and what to plant in them. Because you need to know that using these areas in the best way, it will be the best way to grow your own vegetables. The other thing is to identify the type of soil. Another very simple experiment that you can use. Take a little bit of your soil. You can dig an area, take a little bit of your soil. You see if it's sticky, you can make a bowl, and if it's sticky and gritty, it does means that you have quite a perfect soil that drains well and retain nutrients. Well, if it rolls into a bowl and feels quite rough, quite like a clay, it doesn't drain really well. So you might need to improve this soil by adding some sand, and that will help it to get that gritty and help it draining. And if it doesn't roll, if your bowl doesn't roll at all, then that's a good sign that it's quite of a sandy soil and it won't retain much water or nutrients. So you need to try to manage that as well, just by adding some more, in that case, a bit more of a clay loam, clay soil. Last year, I have in my back garden quite of a clay soil, and it was quite bad in a way. It didn't look like it had much nutrients, the soil. A good way to know when you have quite a really good soil is because you'll find lots of earthworms in there. But if you don't find much of them, it just means it's quite depleted of nutrients. So I didn't have much money to get much compost. So what I did was that I dig a part of the grass to make a whole border, and try to get all the soil out cool from the grass mats. And then I improved this soil using Epsom salt, which is quite of a natural material. And as well, I use a fertilizer that had a fish blood and bone. And that really helped to improve the nutrients in my soil. And I topped that up with a little bit of compost. And I grew tomatoes there, and I grew onions and garlics and lots of different vegetables. So there is a way of doing this as well in a cheaper way. Another thing that we should consider in this stage is to discover the windy spots. For especially like for vegetables like tomatoes, for instance, when they can be really damaged by windy areas. Also, where I planted my tomatoes, I improved the soil really nicely, but it was quite of a windy spot because it was just near a fence dividing my garden with the neighbor's garden. And even though I had bamboo canes and everything protecting them, that didn't help. And after some strong winds, around half of all my tomatoes were plants were damaged. So that's a really good important thing, just to try to discover those windy spots that you might have, and see what will be the best vegetables to put in there. Okay, so we have talked about the space you have. So you have quite of an idea. Janice said that she has a south-facing garden, which is really, really good. You're going to have lots of vegetables in there. We have Myra, who says she has a veg truck and small raised beds and a cold frame, but no greenhouse. So, well, I think that's a really good start. And even if you live in a flat, lots of flats don't have space for even small raised beds. So that's really good. And we have Sophia here that says a small north facing garden and a raised bed. Actually, my garden is north facing. So lots of good tips I can share about that one. And is it Una Patterson says, I have a mini propagator with seeds in now, and a small greenhouse outside, as well as small raised beds for strawberries and lettuce. So you have lots of things already into place. We're going to later on divide the people that come to the workshop in various groups. So this is a really good that you already have an idea of what is the space you have available and how you want to improve that space and utilize them better. And we talk about the conditions, about the sunny spots, how to find your sunny spots, and the different type of, how to identify the type of soil in your windy spots. So we're going to go to this part of what do you need. Here in this purple background, you can see lots of the various things I have. For sure, you'll need compost, you'll need seeds and trays and pots. But I do recommend to start by looking at what do you have in your compost bin for pots. And you might don't even need to buy much, because you can reuse lots of these to start growing your seeds. Gloves, I have gloves here as well. If you're new to gardening, it might take you a little bit of time to get used to the sensations. You don't know if you're allergic to anything. So I do recommend to start just by wearing some gloves. If it's quite of a colder weather, it helps you as well with colder temperatures. When the summertime, I found myself that sometimes it was quite warm. My hands go quite sweaty. So it just depends how you feel, but I do recommend to get some gloves. And other thing is just various tools. But the best approach is to get a tool when you need it. And if you think you're going to use it at least more than 3 times, because sometimes you'll find that you have a shed full of tools, full of all these things that you actually don't use as much. So just start by buying things that you need instead of going with a list of things that you might need. And I think that will be a really good approach. And nowadays, because so many of us are gardening, we have like our neighbors that are gardening as well, and they might have some tools that you could share, that they could share with you, or you could share with them. So we can start creating a little bit more that culture of sharing and enjoying things with others at the same time. Okay, so now that we have all of these steps covered, we're going to start with a little bit of planning. But before we go there, does anyone has any questions so far? You can unmute yourself, tell us, or write it down in the chat, and that will be fine too. Everyone seems fine? Okay, so let's keep moving. From the planning part, we have here just very simply how to start maybe gathering your seeds and seedlings. One of the things that I recommend the most is to really start by thinking, what are those vegetables I like to eat? What are those fruits I like to eat? And then that'll be the best way to decide what will be the best approach for your garden. And that's the same thing I did with the Kilwinning Library Green Gym. We made a list of the things all the volunteers like to eat and all the wildflowers and plants they like to see, and that worked really, really well. Other approaches that you can have as well is like, I was playing one of my neighbors. She was growing lots of carrots, and she was realizing that the carrots were taking quite a big amount of space in her garden. So she decided to grow more rare vegetables that she wouldn't find maybe in the supermarket, because carrots are something I can find in the supermarket quite cheaply. So that could be an approach that you can have as well. Maybe think of more exotic vegetables, or a vegetable with a different variety that you find, for instance, cherry salads and plum tomatoes in the supermarket, and then you can think, oh, well, maybe I should try on a different variety of the things you like to eat. Then we can move on to the seeds, about buying seeds or saving from your seeds. If you are in social media, you have seen maybe lots of videos of people saving seeds. Like, for instance, from these tomatoes, you can really have your garden full of, from these peppers, sorry, you can really have your garden full of peppers, and possibly your neighbors too. So there is that thing that you can actually just use the ones that you have just from the same vegetables you buy in the supermarket, or as well you can buy some others too. The good thing of this one, using just the vegetables you have, the seeds you get from your vegetables, is that of course they're free. You know you like this variety because you're buying it in the supermarket and you're eating it. But sometimes it doesn't adapt to the weather we have here in the UK. So that could be a downside, because maybe that was grown in Spain or somewhere else around the world. And if you're taking that into consideration, I made you can buy seeds from the supermarket, and these seeds packs are better. But one pack, I have noticed, it has only 12 seeds, and you pay £1 to £2. In the Conservation Volunteers, we buy seeds in bigger quantities, and we pay £1 or £2. So for the same amount that you're paying in the supermarket for 12 seeds, we're getting 250 seeds. So that's quite of a big difference. And that's why I thought, well, maybe I should share with everyone the organizations we use for seeds, and as well some of the websites the Veg in One Bed book has to buy seeds online. Okay, so I'll just share the names just there in the chat so you can have a look. So in the Conservation Volunteers, we use King Seeds to buy our vegetable seeds, but the other ones are the ones that this book provides, like Organic Catalog, Real Seeds, and Tarmac Organics. Then we can move on to buying seedlings. Another good way of buying seedlings from your local gardening groups or your supermarkets. 3 good aspects to take in consideration when you're buying seedlings. First, it needs to be really bright green, and you need to look that the leaves don't have anything that is damaging them, any insects around, and their stem is quite right standing. Another thing, if you want to be extremely sure that you're getting the right seedling, and it's with the right conditions, is just take one of the seedlings out, and you'll see that the roots are quite a good formation roots. And if you push them down with your finger, you can see how they bounce back, so they're quite strong. So that's quite some really good ways of taking that into consideration. Another thing that I thought it was quite good to know is about companion planting. In one space, you can have lots of different vegetables, and that's quite of a good thing to be able to have that. So for companion planting, I'm going to share this link with you, and then we can, and then you can hopefully use this link to be able to see what different companion planting you can use. This is something that you can share with everyone, any friends that you'll have. Okay, so looking at the time, we're going to just keep moving on. This is a list of different vegetables that I think is quite a really good thing to maybe start if you have almost zero experience. Maybe you are growing already. Lots of you told me that you're growing already lots of different vegetables, so that's quite of a good start. As you can see from the indoor ones, there is a list of 9 of them, but I found a website that mentions that you can grow 24 different friendly vegetables indoors. And that's another link that I'm sharing in the chat with everyone as well. In the outdoors, there is lots of different ones that you can have. In comparison to the indoors ones, the only difference to the outdoors is that you can grow different type of beans, onions, and garlic. But I think everything else you can grow indoors or outdoors, and that is quite of a good thing, because you might want to start your seedlings in your windowsills and then transplant them outside. Okay, so moving on from there. Let's start thinking about those things that we can, those wildlife that we can incorporate to our vegetables. So I talked previously about the marigolds and how I had the marigolds incorporated in one of my raised beds, and that was quite good because marigolds attract slugs. Well, slugs are actually really keen to eat your carrots, but if you give them quite of a distraction, they'll spend quite some time there just thinking, these are quite tasty, I better stay here. But the more amount of wildflowers that you can bring to your garden, the more pollinators you'll have, and they will leave your vegetables growing in peace, I would say. Then another thing, which is a really good idea, is to have water in your garden. It's really good for birds, which will go there for a drink. It's really good for slugs. Slugs actually get trapped there and they go and have a drink and whoop, they fall. So that's one less slug eating your crop. Another thing that you can do, even if you have a really small space, is to have window bird feeder. Funny enough, I had last year some slugs coming to my window bird feeder, and I have one just like the one you see in the picture here. And they were coming to eat some bird seeds. By this time, you kind of know that I have an issue with slugs. And I love them. I love them in my garden. I'm really happy and lucky. We have like 4 different species of them, and I want them to still be there because sometimes I get hedgehogs and they love slugs. So if I want hedgehogs, I need the slugs, but I want them out of my crop, of my vegetables. So there is lots of different ways. You can even spread some seeds around in some areas, and that will attract the slugs to eat the seeds and leave your carrots alone. Other ways is, of course, by putting a pile of logs, creating your compost bin, and as well building some insect hotel. Something really good of this is that you can do all of these things, even in a small balcony, in a small space, maybe except for the compost bin. So those are real things to think about, and you don't need to do any of these things in big scale. Something quite small will do the trick too. So these are the steps to consider, I will say. First, we talk already about materials and seeds and how different ways of getting seeds, different ways of getting your containers. Of course, you can just go to a garden center and buy your containers, but a really good way is just reusing the things you already have at home, and is unbelievable the amount of things we can use from our compost bin, from our recycling bin. Then other things we talked was about the needs of having compost, but maybe we didn't mention how what type of compost is the best. And I think anyone involved in gardening and that wants to do gardening quite in a good way that protects our environment will recommend you to get a compost that is peat-free, because it has really good things. It retains well water and it retains well nutrients, but at the same time, it helps to keep our peats in their habitats, and that helps us so much with flooding risk and so on. So I will always recommend, if you're going for any type of compost, make sure it's peat-free. Then having all these things in perspective, I'll say, then you can go to your step 2, is your calendar. We're going to talk a little bit more later on in the workshop about the calendar, but it's something so simple, like just having a piece of paper, writing all the different months of the year, and then saying when you're going to start sowing, when you're going to transplant, harvest, and so on. And this is really good because it just gives us the structure. We keep that in mind, and it helps us to know when, even when our vegetables are ready for eating. That's one of the things sometimes you don't know. Should I take a carrot out or a garlic out, just to have a look to see if it's ready? But having a calendar just gives you that extra assurance. Then we go to feeding. This is something we haven't discussed, but there are different ways of doing your feeding. There are natural ways, like I did last year. Use all of my bananas to create a fertilizer. All of my banana skin, sorry, to create fertilizer. So I even invested in a big jar so I could put them there and then fill it with water, leave it for 2 weeks. And it was great for potatoes, for my tomatoes, and as well, let me think what else I had. I think I had it as well for peppers and courgettes. So that's one of the best fertilizer, and it's free. And you can, after you get all the water out, you can put the banana skin directly to the compost, and that will still keep giving more potassium to your plants. Another fertilizer that I used last year were eggshells. I eat eggs regularly, so I save all the shells and I crush them, and then I blended them and make this power dust. And it was just great. I put them all around the garden, not just to the vegetables. I put them to lots of other plants because it provides so many good benefits for plants growing, especially tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. Another way is through nettles. I'm not sure if you have an access to nettles. There is you have maybe nettles at the end of your garden, or there is a space that have lots of nettles, and you talk with the landowner, and it's fine for you to take some nettles. You put them in water and crush them and tear them up, and that can be the whole fertilizer you need for the whole year. So that's a really good one too. I have a question here from Johnston. Yeah. Do you have to dilute it once prepared, or how do you judge the amount to prevent overfeeding? That's a really good question. I really didn't took that into consideration because I was feeding my plants only each 2 weeks. So that's something maybe to think about. If you're feeding them a good amount of feeding each 2 weeks, that was what I did. But I really don't know specifically if I should have diluted them, but I just added, let's say, 3 to 4 banana skins into a jar, fill it up with 2 liters of water, and then put it around. I had, let me think how many plants, like 7 plants of potatoes and lots of plants of tomatoes as well. So when, at least if you're feeding them only twice a month, that will help you to not overfeed them. But if I actually get a proper answer for that one, I'll let you know and maybe send it to you later on if you leave us your email. Okay. Other ways of feeding, you have your compost that some compost that you can buy has 5 months of feeding, so you just forget about that feeding, and that's one less thing to think about. And another way of feeding is by using just granular feeding that you can buy just in the supermarket, and that's as well give you a slow release to your vegetables. It just all depends on how much time you have and how much effort you're going to put. But just think about those things realistically. Will I be able to do some of the natural feeder, or was it just much better to start this year just buying a compost that has some feeder already, and that will save me quite some time. Granular, yes. Emma, let me tell you, granular is just the feeding, the ones that you get like these tiny bowls into these containers, and I can share a link for you to have a look as well, so that can solve that question quickly. I'll share a link in a moment. And Emma Anderson just shared that one, so that's quite of a good one to have a look. Okay, so the next step is just trying to incorporate wildlife and think about those different things I mentioned on how you can incorporate your wildlife to create the benefit for both, the benefit for your crop and the benefit for the wildlife in your garden. Then I'm going to go to the next slides, as I notice we have only 5 minutes to go. And it's about how to keep enjoying your garden. Sometimes we actually forget to enjoy the garden ourselves because we just want it to look nice, and we need to grow this, and we need to get this done. And it's just about really enjoying those things and keeping those memories, just sometimes even by taking pictures of the different stages, or you just see a flower and just decide, well, maybe I'll take this picture and share it with a friend. Another thing, it can be just by enjoying the sun and enjoying the fruit of your labor. Other things, taking your hobbies outside. Are you keen to do some drawing? Why not to do it outside? Are you into writing or poetry as another thing that you can do outside? And if you're going to sit in your garden and you have some binoculars, just take your binoculars and have a look, or even if you are indoors, that's a really good way. And this one is something that sometimes we don't think about, stretching. We actually do that in the Green Gym in Kilbinning Library, because we have seen how it does improve people's experience at the end. Just a bit of stretching at the beginning, a bit stretchy at the end. And the next day you will be able to wake up sore free. So that's a really good thing, because if you are really good, if you have quite some experience by now, you know that gardening can be quite knackering. So a good stretch will do the trick. And let me just take this time that we have left to share some useful websites and apps and books. As I mentioned to you, I have these books here at home, but feel free to use any other books that you have at home or any other websites. And then here there's some of the best apps I have found online. And some of these links are actually just a link to 6 different apps that are good, and they will explain you directly how to use them. The good thing about all of this is that Emma shared that before the presentation, but if you like, we can share that as well. And then there is a list of websites with lots of information. In particularly today, we're going to use the RHA's website to get some advice on growing our food, and as well to give everyone a little bit of experience on how to use it. But there is so much information out there. And the wildlife, for instance, you have the RSPB Year Around Nature and Gardening for Nature, and it provides most of all the information that this book does as well.